Hi guys, welcome to a brand new episode of the Kyrgyzstan. We're here today with Roel. Hey Roel, how are you?
Hello.
And today we have a special guest, John Breth, with us. Hey John, how are you doing?
Very good, thank you. Appreciate you guys inviting me on.
Thank you, thank you. So we actually have you on because you just went through the Mist AI certification and you just passed the exam. So congrats to you.
Thank you.
And we want we wanted to have a little chat with you to kind of talk about, I guess, the Mist in general, wireless in general, a little bit of the the process going through the new certification. But before we get into it, would you mind presenting yourself? Just telling everyone who you are, what you do,
Sure.
and you also, I know you have a YouTube channel and all of this, so feel
Yep.
free to share what you've been doing out
Sure,
there.
yeah. So, my name is John Breth. I own JBC, which is a IT and cybersecurity consulting company here in Northern Virginia. Um, you might know me from my escapades on Twitter. I go by the handle JBizzle703, and I have a YouTube channel called Cyber Insight, which covers different types of IT and cybersecurity foundational information for new folks that are getting into the industry. My background is specifically in network engineering, and that's kind of where I started off. I've done a whole bunch of different Cisco certifications, but then as my career has kind of evolved over time, I've kind of gotten a little bit more into cybersecurity. I'm also an author. I have a Network Plus a study guide that is up on Amazon. And I also was recently featured in the new Tribe of Hackers book, which focused on folks who work in or work on blue teams. So, kind of that
Mhm.
defensive cybersecurity type of stuff.
That's great.
Yeah,
So
very nice.
I guess, yeah, for us, you're not the typical guest because most of the people that comes in are like hardcore Wi-Fi guys.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I
okay.
think for us, yeah.
So I
So
can
I,
say this right here. I have never worked in an environment that had Wi-Fi. I'm a
okay,
Never?
complete
so
never, not once. Nope.
Wow.
Complete,
you're missing out, man.
uh, complete, hardwired network environments. So
Mhm,
kind of taking that and going and doing the Mist was definitely kind of an interesting experience for me. Um,
mhm,
and along like my whole Cisco path, right? So I got my CCNA back in 2006, right? And then did my CCNP and finished that in maybe 2008.
mhm.
Did a CCIE written past that. And even in all of those, certifications and studying and stuff like that, really none of it covered any wireless stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
so
You're right.
really the only wireless stuff that I got was either through college, right? So different classes there. And then when I took my Network Plus, which, was 17 years ago, 16 years ago, something like that.
Mhm,
And then obviously, like I said, I wrote a study guide, a book for the Network Plus, and I also developed a class that is actually offered through a learning institute for the
mhm.
Network Plus as well. And so that kind of was a good reintroduction to wireless fundamentals for me prior to
Mhm.
jumping into the Mist stuff.
Yeah. So
So,
so
Yeah.
as a security professional,
yes.
does Wi-Fi scare you at all? Do you think that um it leads companies to be kind of vulnerable to attacks because of how Wi-Fi is in general?
I mean, I think that really depends upon the environment, what the policies are as far as BYOD, what type of wireless networks you have set up as far as like guest access or internal access, um, the type of monitoring tools that you have within your environment. I mean, I think just like with every type of service in IT, it really depends upon whether you kind of have thought about all these different things before deploying it. And if you kind of have thought about the threat surface and the different types of risks that are unique to your organization the type of threat actors that you would have that would be acting against you, whether it's more cyber criminals or nation states or, whatever. You kind of just have to take all those things into account. And if you do that, then to me, from my perspective, it doesn't add any additional spookiness or whatever, right?
That's a good
But
response.
yeah,
Yeah.
but if you don't do that, then yeah, it's scary. Who's plugged in where? What
Right,
networks
right,
are running around here? Do we have honeypots? Do we have rogue APs? Do we have all that
Mhm.
jazz? But I mean, that's the same thing with wired networks, right? So
yeah.
you know,
You just take a different approach to it, and you take the same layered security approaches to
exactly.
this other medium. Now, I've been following you for a while, so I've seen you with your on YouTube, all these study videos that
Mhm.
you've been putting out, and I think they're really great. And what I've really been
Appreciate it.
following is your Juniper track,
Yep.
because that's a track that I've been really interested in. But
Mhm.
I guess the best phrase to say is I've been too lazy to really attempt a certification. Um,
Sure.
what led you to go towards the AI track, or the Mist AI
Uh,
certification?
so it was more so because I said that I would do all the Juniper Associate certs, and they snuck it in at the end, to be honest.
Mhm. Like, oh
Um,
shoot,
I
another
thought
one.
yeah, exactly. So my whole I guess I step back a little bit. My whole thing with doing the Juniper certs was, COVID hit. I kind of decided I wanted to start up a YouTube channel to kind of put some information out there to help, new people. I really like Juniper. I've been using Juniper for a really long time. Actually, starting back in 2007, I used their NetScreen platform a lot, right? And then probably in the past 10 years or so, more so the Juno side. So in my day-to-day work, I do a lot of stuff with MX routers and SRXs and those particular devices within their service portfolio. So when I saw that Juniper had put out a special, well, I don't know, I'd call it special, but when they put out their incentives to get people to do training this year and saw that they were doing the free certification vouchers, that kind of pushed me a little bit to be like, hey, I'm pretty familiar with a lot of their stuff. I think that I could probably, take their free training, turn that into some content that would help maybe push some people who weren't aware of Juniper towards Juniper. Just because, from my experience, everybody who comes from Cisco and ends up using Juniper really ends up falling in love with Juniper. So,
Mhm.
Yeah, I would agree.
you know, I thought that there isn't much out there as far as content kind of doing
Yeah.
that, and I thought that that might be a niche that would probably be helpful to people. I mean, I could spend all day talking about Cisco, and that's great, but you probably have a bunch of other people that talk about Cisco all the time. You'd be competing with David Bombal, who's awesome. His content is awesome. Network Chuck, all of those guys that kind of are doing that full time and putting out a lot of great content. I thought my effort might be a little bit better suited kind of on some more niche things that aren't necessarily getting as much attention as I thought they should be.
Well, looking at the Magic Quadrant, it might not be niche for
Right.
um,
Yeah.
uh, a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been really pleased with Juniper and what they've done over time. I think the technology is great. Its performance is excellent. There's a reason why large organizations and tier one ISPs and
Hmm.
large federal organizations use Juniper devices.
Yep. Yeah, I
Hmm.
mean,
Now,
we have them um in our campus. I work on a
mhm.
university, and
Okay, yep,
I mean it stands up. It's I mean
yeah,
we all somehow get our start with Cisco, and then we
sure,
start expanding into other vendors in networking
yep,
space, and it's natural. There's
yep,
nothing. I don't have anything against any other vendor. It's just for me. For a lot of us, it comes down like wireless. We come down
sure, yeah,
to identifying what the requirements are, and then picking
yep,
the one that fits the requirements. And then a lot of that too is down to preference, because of course you
sure,
don't want to implement a vendor when most of the people that need to support it aren't even familiar with it, right?
Right.
But
Yep.
here in
Mhm.
this case, as you do these videos, you're really drilling in down to the content that Juniper is providing, and then you're going through these practice exams.
Mhm.
What's your method for, or what's your take on how someone should approach the Mist AI certification?
Sure. So the Mist AI certification is a little bit different than all the other Juniper associate certs. So since the Mist AI service portfolio was kind of pulled into Juniper, they don't actually have any training within Juno's Genius yet, right? So they have one practice test, which is good, but the actual training itself resides on a website that is owned by Mist, which
Mhm.
I guess now it's owned by Juniper, but it still is Mist. It's
It's still
I don't
Mist, yeah.
Mhm.
right,
Mhm.
exactly. It's called Mist Masters. They have I don't remember how many lessons it is. I think it's like 4, right? And they kind of took some of the information that Juniper has on their Intro to Wireless class
Yeah.
and combined it with some specific Mist trainings themselves. The dude that does that, I don't remember his name, but his handle is like potato underscore fi or
Yeah.
something like that.
Joel,
Yeah, Joe Crane.
Joel
Yeah,
Crane, we're
yeah.
very, yeah.
Um, I thought that he did a great job with those trainings. I
Mhm.
mean, he does
Yeah,
a
he's
really good
excellent.
job, yeah, explaining things. Um,
Mhm.
so it had a lot more personality per se than kind of the other Juno's Genius training classes, which was nice.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, just different
so
from
that
your traditional slides and
yes,
someone speaking to the slides, right? He's a lot more
exactly.
interactive, and he's got a good tone when he talks to you. He's
Yep,
not
most definitely.
monotonous with his voice.
Yep.
But
'Cause-
a lot of those trainings did come from the Mist dashboard, where they have
mhm,
this Mist University, where they try to
Yep.
Mhm.
educate people who become customers on how Mist works, and not just even Mist, but they've included background into how Wi-Fi works in general as
mhm.
well.
Mhm. Mm.
So
Yeah, they have a
I
Wi-Fi
thought
basics. Go
that
ahead.
to your point, you is really really good is that they show you the tool set as they're working through it, right? So that was a little bit different than the other Juniper training, where it might have been screenshots and stuff like that. Whereas in Joel was actually like, okay, yeah, we're going to go here and I'm going to show you what this is, and we're going to drill down into this. And
Mhm.
these are the things that you'd want to look at when you're going through that. And so, from a teaching perspective, um, I think it was a bit more engaging. So
That's good.
um,
Mhm.
there wasn't really any labs or anything like that that would go along with that. So that was kind of a little bit different than the other Juniper certs, because some of those other ones do actually have labs.
Yeah.
Um, and so, kind of my recommendation on those other certs, especially if you don't have any hands on Juniper experience, is to take the labs that are at the end of those chapters and do them in the Juniper VLabs, right? Because their VLabs, as far as I can tell, is about as great of a virtualized lab environment that you're going to find from a service provider, right? From a vendor that has something for you to kind of get your hands dirty with their stuff. They have pretty much all of their different devices that you can purchase as virtualized devices, and they come fully licensed, right? So if you want to mess around and you want to use all of the routing protocols, you want to, test out IDP, you want to test out their UTM, you want to test out, whatever you can think of that they offer, that virtual environment allows you to do that, which,
Hmm.
beats the pants off of something like,
Mhm.
Packet Tracer or something like that, which is
Yeah.
a little bit more
Yeah. Like
limiting.
a
Oh,
simulator. One of the
exactly.
simulators you get from a third party. I think
Yep.
Labs is probably the hardest piece for
Mhm.
a wireless certification, because
Sure.
you kind of have to see wireless in action in order to
Mhm.
validate it, right? So I can see some people implementing a lab where maybe you can change the knobs and something has to verify whether or not you've done it correct on the other end. You just don't get
Mhm.
to see it at the endpoint side, the device that uses the Wi-Fi network. So that's which I think is also even just as important, is when you make a change, you have to understand what that looks like from a client
Sure.
device. Right. And it's the
Mhm.
same for networking too, where if you make a change, like removing a VLAN, what exactly does
Right.
that do on the
Yep.
network when you have devices or servers attached? And those are exactly the kind of labs that Juniper shares.
Yep.
I
Now,
I think for
have you?
Mist, yeah, I was gonna say for Mist, if you want to have practical experience, you can try to get a free AP if you attend a webinar, and if you
Mm,
qualify, you can actually get a free AP, and then you can create a free account on their dashboard, and then you can do quite a bit of work if you have an AP on the dashboard. So that's, I
oh,
guess, one thing you can do if you for the first level of certification. I think that would be already pretty good. And then for the second level, for the specialist level, they actually have a full-on training,
mm,
instructor-led training, right?
yeah.
And then when you attend this training, it's like a 4-day class, and you have a lot of labs. So the students, they will get their
Okay.
own pod, and then
Mm,
you have a lot of lab on how to get everything set up, how to break it, how to troubleshoot it, how to see how it's working, and then we even do stuff on programming, automation, API, and all of that. So
oh, nice.
um, yeah, so you get to practice with the tool quite a bit if you
Mm.
attend the training. So um, regarding to a lab, you pretty much went into the exam without having touched Mist too much, right? Just for the
I,
theory.
I've never seen it in real life or touched it. Correct.
Okay, and you
So,
were able to pass.
yes. Yep.
Mm, okay.
So, and I think that that lends to um, the training that they have on the Mist Masters website. So, like I said, they did a
Hmm.
really good job walking through the GUI and making you kind of understand the different hierarchical levels, the difference between what you would configure at the org level, what you configure at the site level, what
Hmm.
types of things you would actually configure on an AP standalone, right? The different SLAs, way that you would troubleshoot different SLAs, the way that you would look at events, things like that. You know,
Hmm.
to be
Okay.
able to pass the test, they did a good enough job breaking that down, I think.
You're making me feel very confident then about me taking this
Yeah.
exam.
Yeah.
So let me throw one caveat with that. It was the one exam from Juniper where I did not know if I was going to pass it or not
Mm,
once I hit
Hmm.
submit. Even
yeah.
though I ended up getting an 85 on it, which is like
Oh, that's pretty
pretty
good.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had about 20 questions flagged at the end that I'm like,
You had to review them. Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, I'm going to give it my best shot on what I think this is. And so I think I obviously guessed more right than wrong. Um, but
No, that's
yeah,
good. I think
yeah.
that speaks to the training of how well it was really done on the. Uh, did you say that the Juno's Genius does not have the training available? So
So
you
it
went through
it
the Miss
it doesn't have
Masters?
the training videos. All it has is a practice test.
Okay.
Hmm.
Um,
For now,
so
for now.
you have yes, and they're moving everything over to the actual Juniper website. So they're actually
Yeah.
getting rid of
Mhm.
the Juno's Genius website. They've
So
been
how did
starting.
you know that how did you know where to go to study for the material for the exam?
So if you go to the like Mist AI certification page, so they have like a breakdown of all the different certs. They kind of give you the
Mhm.
recommended training links there.
Okay.
So yeah.
And then that
Um,
led you to how to create an account on Mist's website,
Mist,
I
correct.
presume?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Um, so the other thing is with the videos and the lessons they have on that Mist website, they also have kind of like status questions as you kind of move your way through that training. And so I would say don't sleep on those questions. Like think of those the same way that you would use a practice test as a resource to be able to check your knowledge. So keep that in mind. Um, the one other thing that I would say is that the practice test that's on the Juno's Genius website compared to all the other certs probably is the least amount of questions that are very similar that you'll see on the exam. So
Mhm.
on some of the other certs, I'd be like, okay, yeah, that question is almost identical, or it's, they tweaked
It's a
the
tricky
words
one.
just a little bit.
Yeah.
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 But on this one, uh, if you just think that you're gonna be able to just memorize the practice
Memorize
test
questions and answers. Yeah.
exactly, and go and take it, you're gonna be hurting yourself
Yeah.
quite a
So
bit for
how
that.
did you
So
feel about
go
that
for it.
when you're going through the exam where you're like, wait, I don't remember this topic being
Well, no, so it wasn't so much not remembering the topic. I mean, like, I think they did, the training does a good job of covering everything. It's just whether or not the specific scenarios that they're going to be asking you, if you're familiar with seeing a question in that format.
Yep.
And if you
Okay.
aren't, then you kind of have to go back and be like, okay, yeah, I remember reading about this, or oh yeah, okay, I kind of remember him, walking through the GUI, and I know that it's
Mhm.
not that and that, so I'm gonna pick C because that seems to be the
Yeah.
best one, and I'm not
Process of
100% sure.
elimination.
Exactly.
The
Yep.
exam itself, you have to build a certain kind of skill set, right? It's not just
Hmm.
about the material, but also about exam taking. Like you have to
Most
know how
definitely.
to
Yeah.
take an exam, and there's tips about, and that's kind of the approach I take as well. Is I look at the answers and just eliminate the ones that are for sure not the answer, so that way
Exactly. Yeah.
you just limit to the ones that could be right. So maybe you'll have a higher chance of getting it correct. So there is a certain, I guess, art to taking an exam.
And I think I probably found, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 questions that I was able to go back and correct because I ended up finding the answer in another question later on. Right? So that's
Mhm.
always a good strategy to have as well is, if you end up finding something in the question that ends up relating back to another answer that you had
Yep.
somewhere, then
So
that can be
so
helpful.
do you feel that the exam was pretty fair to the training material that you're provided? Because that is right now the only training material, aside from someone just getting a missed AP and then going through it themselves.
Um, yeah, I think so. I think that they definitely do cover a lot of material. Um, I think that it sets you up in a way to be able to pass the test. But like all other certifications, it's like you really want to make sure that you understand the information and not necessarily just be practicing to pass the test, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So probably if it was your first certification that you've ever taken, then it's probably going to be pretty difficult. But if you've been in IT for a while and you're kind of familiar with, I don't know, the nomenclature and the way that we talk about different things and stuff like that, then you can kind of infer what certain words mean and stuff like that, and that will help
Mhm.
you out.
And do you feel that you have a better knowledge of Wi-Fi after taking the certification, or because it's still a vendor certification after all, right?
Sure.
So what's your take on that?
Most definitely. I think if I had to like put a percentage on like how much of it was Wi-Fi fundamentals versus
Mhm.
like actual like Mist AI knowledge, I'd say it probably was, I don't know, maybe 3/5 to 2/3 Wi-Fi fundamentals.
Mhm.
So,
It's
it's
good.
it's not like I
Mhm.
just
That's good.
learned,
Yeah.
uh, you know, about this GUI that I'm never gonna see again, and like, the stuff just goes out. Even on some of the questions relating to Mist, it was reinforcing Wi-Fi fundamentals
Fundamentals.
that you
Yeah.
need to understand in answering the question.
Right.
So,
Because you could take
I,
that knowledge and apply that to any wireless vendor. So
yeah,
it is
most
helpful. Yeah.
definitely. Yep.
Mhm. That's good feedback. Mhm.
What did you think about the AI portion?
So, I th- so it seemed pretty cool to me, right? Like I enjoyed it. My only caveat with that though is since I haven't had any exposure to any other vendors, I don't know how much of it is unique to that, right? Or if kind of like the majority of the stuff that they're doing there is, the same type of thing that I would find in Cisco's wireless LAN controller type of
Mhm.
setups. So I don't necessarily feel like I can give a super, articulate opinion on that just based off of not having enough exposure to other
Okay.
technologies.
I can tell
But
you it's pretty cool.
okay, yeah. I mean, so just based off of not knowing those other things, it definitely seemed cool. So I liked the way that you could do the profiles. I like the labels, right? So being able to use labels to be able to integrate different types of policies and stuff like that was pretty cool. I like the way that with the SLAs and troubleshooting different SLAs, they broke out all of the kind of sub issues that might, be causing those. And so from a troubleshooting perspective, that seemed like that would be, really, really
Mhm.
beneficial and make things a lot easier.
So I think Mist then has been nailing it pretty spot on, because that is typically the sore spot for a lot of people who have Wi-Fi
Mm,
networks, is not even having a clue as to what
mm,
the issue could be, right? And it could
sure.
be RF, it could be DNS, it could be DHCP, it could be a
Right.
configuration you've done on your access points, and at least having some insight into a direction that
Mhm.
you could take that's already getting you towards a fix much faster.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it even for us engineers, it changes a little bit the way we work with the Wi-Fi network. Like even myself, I have Mist at home. When I have issues now, my reflect is just to go see what Mist is saying, right? And before I
Yeah.
would just try to, do I get an IP address, or I would
Right.
do
Yeah.
other checks. And now, my go-to place would be like manage.mist.com. Let's see what SLA I have,
Mm,
Right.
and let's see which events I have for that device. And
yeah.
yesterday I had an old printer that I haven't connected to my network in a while, so I had to reconfigure it, and it wouldn't get an IP address. So, and I went to my Mist dashboard and I saw the DHCP wasn't answering, and I just tried again, and then eventually got an IP address. But yeah, just to show, just to illustrate the fact that it even changes our workflow as engineers,
Hmm.
because it's giving us a lot of good information.
Yeah, I mean, as engineers, any tool set that provides actionable information is valued, right? So
Hmm.
I think it
Hmm.
it does a really good job at presenting you the useful information in a way that's kind of intuitive. And if me
Hmm.
never having any experience with it and not ever doing any Wi-Fi in an operational environment, um, is able to kind of read up on it, watch some videos and stuff like that, and it makes sense to me, then I think that that's probably pretty indicative of it being a good tool to use in your environment.
How do you feel about also adding switches, routers, and potentially firewalls to also that same Mist dashboard, and having that same functionality that you see on the Wi-Fi side, also on the wired side?
So I would I would have to probably see that in action a little bit more to be comfortable with exactly what that's going to be providing from a value perspective, right? So um, seeing that compared to what other tool sets you might have in your environment that's already monitoring some of those similar things, and kind of doing a trade-off on, all right, do I want to remove those from this other tool set that's doing certain types of service level monitoring for network devices and only put them over in Mist and just use that? Are there going to be certain things that I was doing with this other tool set that I'm going to be missing out on if I do that? But it is an interesting question.
Yeah. Yeah, because I see that they'll have right now both of those methods, right? You can have it managed by Mist, the
Hmm.
Mist dashboard, and have the ability to do the zero touch provisioning and
Right.
templates, and to some degree that's good for people who don't want to deal with having a pre-stage equipment and just have that
Sure.
consistency, right? But then I
Hmm.
can see not having to relinquish a lot of that control that you normally have with
Sure.
your hardware. I think that's hard to adjust to, right? Because um, getting used to the command line interface and doing whatever you want with it, how the flexibility is just having that flexibility. I think is kind of like
Right.
a safety net for a lot of people.
Most definitely. Most definitely. I
Yeah.
mean, I think it comes down to whatever the unique situation is in that environment, right? And what tools are there, what skill sets you have with the folks that you have there, what are
Mhm.
the kind of competing priorities? Because there might be situations where, you end up gaining some efficiencies from putting
Mhm.
them in there and doing that. Or there might be other cases where you lose some visibility and it's not worth that, right? So,
Yeah. And
It's
that's
that's
probably
for
always the
where
best answer in IT, right? It
yeah,
depends.
it
So
depends. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I was gonna ask, John, from a security standpoint, what could you see as an advantage of having everything, seen by the cloud, seen by the AI engine? Could you see like potential, I don't know, advantages of seeing like all of the traffic in your network? Could you see
sure.
like it being beneficial from a security standpoint?
Right. So I think that there's a few different things with that, right?
Hmm.
So obviously, any type of additional visibility that you can get is beneficial. Any type of additional data you can get has a potential of being beneficial. Any type of unified configurations and control, so you don't get one-offs and stuff like that. Anything to help kind of that change management process and being able to have
Hmm.
policies in place to make sure that you're using the right types of algorithms, and you're changing your access keys and all that type of stuff. All of those are really, really solid things. I guess kind of the getting the ability to see the traffic can be really, really important, especially if you don't already have some other security tools in place to be able to do that, especially from a wireless perspective, right? Because oftentimes the type of traffic monitoring that we would do is probably more north to south, right? So you might put in some type of IDS or something like a bro sensor, or something like that, kind of at your um, input and
Edge.
output
Right?
areas
Yeah.
of your environment. So maybe like, wherever your core infrastructure is going up to your firewall before it goes out to the internet, right? Maybe you want to get all that traffic before you do any natting and stuff like that. And that's a pretty standard place where you would put in that type of technology. Well, if you have wireless to wireless communication, which is kind of more east to west, and you don't have a way to monitor that, you could be missing out on a lot of potentially nefarious activity that might be happening in your environment.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's a good point because you may have somebody trying to do a man in the middle attack, and that doesn't necessarily go up to your firewall, right? So you don't
Right.
know about that. I guess that's where wireless needs to transform more in the security side of things, and maybe Mist can lead in that direction. They do have a pretty good policy feature in there. In the Mist dashboard, which you
Yep.
had mentioned previously. So I think
Yep.
they're kind of going down that route. They've been adding more security features. I think they just need more input from security experts like yourself.
Well, I think it's kind of, we see this whenever we have different types of IT services that start to kind of transcend and become more popular, right? So normally everything from a tool set being accepted and utilized heavily is normally going to remain on the infrastructure side, on the wired side, and stuff like that. And so we definitely have, those types of gaps in wireless. We also have the same thing with cloud, right? I mean, so the types of security tools that we would normally have in the enterprise, a few years ago, we didn't have any of those capabilities from a cloud perspective. And I think we've
Mhm.
kind of seen the awareness of that change, and we start to see more and more cloud-based security tools become more popular, more integrated, and stuff like that. So I think that's kind of the natural progression of these things. Is once the surface or the use surface ends up continuing to expand, and people become more aware of kind of these gaps in monitoring and visibility and protection, then that opens up the potential for companies to develop solutions to do that. And everybody knows companies like making money. And so, if there's not tool sets out there to do that, then if there's a big enough need,
Somebody
somebody
will
will
fill
step
the
up and
gap.
do it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Francois, you're an instructor. So from your point of view, what do you think about Mist AI from instruction point of view, having these in person or even virtual
Hmm.
classes, the live classes?
Hmm.
Do you think it's
Yes.
required to have it to take this Mist AI certification? Even there's two of them now, right? Two Mist
Yeah,
AI
there's two of them.
certifications.
Yeah, so I mean, for the first level, for the associate level, it's probably not required. You can probably do what John did, go through the MistMaster. MistMaster is actually quite extensive. You have the Wi-Fi basic section, but you also have other sections where they talk about, location, they talk about automation, and they give like pretty good examples. You even have like video, like tutorials type of video, so you can actually do it. If you have a Mist AP with you can do what they're doing and practice on your own. And I think that would be sufficient to do the associate level. If you want to try the second level, which is the JNCIS Mist AI at the specialist level, I think that's when attending the training can be very beneficial because it's not an easy exam. And so if you don't really know the solution, or if you don't study it, then you might not pass it right away. um, and I've taken the exam after taking the course twice
Mm.
before being able to teach it. So I can tell you guys it's not super super simple. But the training definitely gives you the knowledge to pass. And I know that because multiple of my students took the exam, after taking the training, and they passed. So it
Okay.
was a good, a good training for them. And also, what I've noticed is people who don't really know Mist, like people who have heard about Mist, um, come take the training, and at the end of the training, they're like amazed,
Really? Okay.
about how Mist works. Like, oh, I didn't know it was that good. Um, Especially, I guess,
Well, that's
for us.
interesting. Well, why
Yeah.
why were they taking the course to begin with if they didn't know, like, oh wow, like some of these features I had no clue that they
Uh,
were that extensive or
I think it was more like, the sales team giving them access to the course.
okay.
You should take it. You should take a look at this thing. I think that was more, yeah. um, but yeah, because like Wi-Fi guys like you and I used to Cisco Aruba controllers and all of this. We used to work with the APs, configure them, configure controllers, and heavy machines, and code upgrades. All of these stuff that are not trivial. When you go to Mist, you take an API out of the box, you scan it with your phone, and it's up and running. You're
Yeah.
like, what? So
I don't
it's
have to
like
do
it's too good to
anything.
be true. Yeah, exactly.
And then you're like, wait, why am I
So-
training? Why am I taking training then?
exactly. And I mean, that's one of the reason why in the training we have time to cover a lot of things, right? Because the pretty much the way the training is structured. The first day we talk about the theory of Wi-Fi, explain all of the basic concepts. It's a lot of theory, but then the second day we spend the day setting up the environment. And in one day, we're able to set up the environment, onboard our APs, configure a few SSIDs, one guest SSID, one corporate SSID with radius, one a PPSK SSID, and we can do all of this in one day. And
Yeah,
then on the third day, we look at all the operational side of things, the SLA, try to troubleshoot common issues, look at the packet captures, and then we still have one day left. And in the last day, in the morning we talk about location and how we can do location with BLE. And then in the afternoon we talk about automation, API, Python, and so on. So
interesting. Okay.
um,
John,
yeah.
do you wish you took Francois' course on this?
I mean, it sounds awesome. I would have liked to have gotten some hands-on stuff for sure. I mean,
Yeah,
that
Mhm.
would
yeah,
have
we're
been.
gonna have to get you a Mist AP somehow so you can
I mean, that would be
put
awesome.
those certs to use, John.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Did you take both certs or you
Elaborate.
just did the associate level cert?
For just the associate. Yep.
Okay. God, I was
So
gonna ask you what you thought about the second one too. Francois is saying it's hard, so
yeah. So that's kind of the big question that everybody keeps asking is, am I going to go after, what Juniper cert am I going to go after
Mhm.
next?
yeah.
I actually, so this
Time to
year
hit
was
up
the
the
first time I've
professional
taken
level
certs
certs.
since, when was the last time I had a cert? 2014, I think.
Oh wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, so I went, when I was early in my career, I went like cert crazy. So it was like
Yeah.
Net
Yeah.
Plus, CCNA, Sec Plus, CCNP, CISP, the CCIE written, and then did the CISP specialization for architecture.
Okay.
So the CISP ISSAP.
Okay.
And then I stopped. I'm like, I've done all the certs I need to do in my life.
Cert
I'm not doing
overload.
any more certs. Yeah, I'm gonna just keep getting all the CPEs for my
Mhm.
CISP and the CISP ISSAP because I'm never gonna take that exam ever again in my life. I don't care if I'm 85 years old and working in Walmart. I'm gonna get my cybersecurity CPEs because that test was brutal. So I let all my Cisco stuff expire. I was working for a tier one ISP who didn't care about Cisco stuff all that much anymore. I mean, we would use Cisco stuff on the LAN, but pretty much anything security or on the backbone and stuff like that would all be Juniper stuff. Um,
Yep.
and then, but I wasn't driven to do any Juniper certs. I'm like, I know this stuff. I don't need to take the certs. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Um, so, having the hands-on for years allows you to do that. But for new
Right.
people who aren't familiar with it, the certs is a great way to kind of gain that knowledge that you might not have the ability to learn or get that hands-on in your work, especially if they don't have a large Juniper footprint. So,
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
um,
Taking
so I haven't.
certs
Oh, go
in
ahead.
of its taking certs in of itself is a different discussion, right? There's different reasons why you would take a
Sure.
certification, how you would use it, especially in the beginning, right? You don't have
Hmm.
you may not have the experience, you
Yep.
may not have the job that requires the cert, or yeah, I mean, and then by the time you get to where you are now, where the certs don't even matter, it's just more
Right.
about taking it just because
Mhm.
you feel like taking it and not
Sure.
necessarily a
Yeah. Yeah.
necessity for the position.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, so at this point, I'm taking certs to be able to give content to people to help them learn stuff.
Mhm.
Really, is what it is at this point.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure which Juniper cert I might go for next. A lot of people, have been throwing out recommendations. Um,
What's the one
I
that
really,
jumps out at you the most? Like which one do you
well,
keep thinking about?
I really enjoyed the JNCDA the most out of all of them,
Mhm.
but
Mm,
I
okay.
think that's because I'm an architect. Like that's
Yeah.
what
You
I do.
gravitate towards that. Yeah.
So exactly. So I'm like, man, this cert is awesome. Anybody who's in networking should take this cert because it really covers a lot of the fundamental overall networking project type of stuff that a lot of times people who just go and take a CCNA or Network Plus and haven't been working in an
Mhm.
environment leading a network project don't necessarily understand kind of the life cycle of what that is and some of the best practices from like a design perspective of why you want
Mhm.
to do redundancy in these places and you want to have the ability to oversubscribe in these places and all these different types of things. So continuing down that path and looking at the next level up of that design and architecture path interests me probably the most, but I don't think that they go all the way to a expert level cert with that.
Oh,
I think
really? Okay.
that, yeah, I think it either ends at the specialist or the professional level.
Okay.
So it's like if they're going to spend the time on it, I might as well maybe do something that's more aligned towards an expert level type of thing. If I'm going to like really go all the way down a
Go in.
path.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, going with one of the more route switch based paths. I know they kind of break those up, so you kind of have like your DC and your enterprise and and,
Yeah.
and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So
Mhm.
I don't know.
Do
I'm I'm gonna put a little bit more time and
Yeah.
thought into it. I think.
Maybe Mist will throw out an expert level cert, and you should go
Oh
after,
man, I
go
know.
go towards the next, and then and then they'll throw in a Wi-Fi design
Man,
certification.
yeah, that would
No,
be all
the
right.
That would
they
be
need
more along your
a
path right there. Is the
Yeah,
architect
yeah.
design
I mean,
path,
as
and
long as they start sending me some free APs, yeah, we can wrap it up.
yeah,
You
we
know?
right
can
there.
talk.
If anyone at Mist is listening or
Yeah, yeah,
watching, John needs some APs so he can start putting the certification to
yeah.
use, and getting better Wi-Fi over at his clients, who he's already giving
Exactly.
great security.
It's
He just needs to
we get
extend that to the
exactly. We need better
Wi-Fi.
SLAs, man. We gotta keep that stuff moving. Now, I actually have a missed question that maybe either of you might possibly know. Do they have an offline version of the dashboard and portal? So,
No.
like, if you no,
No.
okay.
No,
So,
because everything works with the cloud and the AI
They
engine
they
in the cloud.
are
So,
they are cloud native, so it has to be
okay,
in the cloud.
they
gotcha.
they do have different clouds now. So they have
What?
one cloud in the US, they have one cloud in the EU, and I think they have a Google Cloud now.
Oh, okay,
I
they
want
got
to
a lot
say,
of clouds floating around there. Okay.
Yeah.
yeah. The only thing is because it's different cloud, it's going to be different data sets. So the
Sure.
AI might not work the exact same, right? So all the machine learning they've been doing on the US cloud might not be exactly the same in the Google as I think Google is, Google uses Mist. And I think they wanted their own. That's how it started. I believe
Right,
so.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then in Europe, it's a different deal because you know how over there you have different rules and regulations,
Compliance
Yeah.
regularly. Yeah. Okay.
compliance. Yeah, and then some countries are very strict on where the data is located,
Oh,
right? So
definitely. Yeah.
there's like, yeah, sometimes they don't want to have their data in the US whatsoever.
Yep. Right.
So that's why for the EU market, they had to
Right.
have a
Right.
EU cloud.
Yeah. So to have a offline version, you'd either have to be a really, really, really big organization or a
For sure.
government so strict to
Yeah.
require it.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, and that's kind of where I was going at it was from like a US government perspective.
Yeah,
You
something
know, they have like
offline, right? Doesn't tie out
yeah,
into the
that
public
or
internet.
they have like their FedRAMP clouds and stuff like that where they put all of their cloud services into
Hmm.
those particular kind of
Yeah. That's
closed
I mean, that's a good
clouds.
question, right?
Yeah.
It's probably something that does come up where maybe the type of data that's being transferred over
Sure.
wireless needs to be secured, so they don't want that to potentially go
Hmm.
to the internet, even though the data doesn't
Right.
go, like the actual data payload doesn't go
Hmm.
out to
Sure.
the cloud,
But
right?
the
Just
but the metadata would, right? Because that's
yes,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
you're
yeah,
looking at, and
yeah,
so people would be some people would
yeah.
be particular about that depending on the environment. So,
I can see that. I don't know if Mist will ever get a solution for that because for them, I think they have a lot of features that relies on the cloud and the AI engine. So if you take that away from the solution, I don't know. I guess we'll see because they might get pressure from, like you said, bigger
Yeah.
customers
I mean,
that have very strict.
they have the Mist Edge that
mhm.
could
Yeah.
potentially move things offline. If
Yep.
they move all the brains and functionality to that box
Right.
and also use the APs, then
Hmm.
maybe that could happen. But they probably don't want us to give people ideas like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, the Mist Edge only moves, a set of microservices locally, but you'll still need the cloud. So you'll
Sure.
still need to create like an organization on the public cloud, if you will. So
Yep.
you're
Yeah.
still going to get some
There's no
metadata that will
escaping the
go.
cloud then.
I'm
You're
afraid so.
stuck. All right. Well, yeah, John, it was a good discussion. Bringing you on to the show because you're not a Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is not your primary thing. Security is,
Right, right.
and to hear someone dive into Wi-Fi to this
Yep.
capacity, and also then start telling people about Wi-Fi, right? Going through the Mist AI certification. So I encourage everyone to go visit John's YouTube channel. We'll put a
For sure.
link out into the show notes and description of this episode. Really check it out, because I know a lot of our listeners are not just Wi-Fi only; they also
Yep.
touch other parts of the network. So if you are looking at Juniper as well, very good
Yep.
content there, because that's something I'm looking at, and I'm looking at your videos. So it's good
Awesome.
to see that there is something other than Cisco out there.
Sure. I mean, so I do a few different things with that. I mean, so we have the networking stuff that we do on there. So I like to do like Network Plus practical labs. So what I
Yeah.
do with those is I take different free open source software and do some lab videos that people can follow along with. That kind of give them a little bit
Hmm.
more hands-on type of stuff. A lot of that stuff also aligns kind of with the objectives with the CCNA. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a beneficial thing to do. I actually am developing a new series called Cisco versus Juniper, where I'm going to take different types of configurations or services and show you how you would implement them on both, and kind
Okay.
of compare and contrast and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's good.
Um,
Nice.
and
Yeah.
then I do a whole bunch of different cybersecurity stuff, different types of content and videos on there as well. So whether it's reviewing of different types of hacking tools, or um, best practices and stuff like that for hardening your environment, I like to talk about all that stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's great to, 'cause I like to see other parts of the network too, right? And understand how they work, see the differences. And it just all overall makes us better IT people. Cause if we
Most
can
definitely.
Mhm.
understand how the whole network, we don't have to be experts in every
Right.
single part of the network, but to
Yep.
understand what's happening, and at least kind of know where you need to go, or even know what to look at, then
Yep.
that makes you better at what you do in your job. So
Well,
many of us will specialize eventually, right, as we progress in
yep.
our careers,
You
and
get
that's
attracted to
good.
certain things and you gravitate towards that, right? I
Yeah,
mean, the
exactly.
things that interest you, you know, and that you're familiar with and you're good with, and that kind of draws you in. I do have one more question. Have any of you either used Wi-Fi Pineapple in your adventures on wireless
I have
networks?
one down here on my shelf that I need to
Oh,
open up.
you need to do that. You need to mess around with that. That's a lot of fun.
It is, yeah. We're supposed to do an episode on it, and
Yeah.
I guess it's my fault because I'm too busy or too lazy to open it. I got to spend some time on it, and then maybe we can bring you on, and you can tell us, you know, the security aspect of it,
Sure.
as we
Yeah, yeah,
mess around with the knobs and try to break Wi-Fi over here
yeah.
on my neighbors.
I mean, you're just gonna just keep sending disconnect messages and just keep putting people off of the network.
And that's something I do run. I have run into that, and being in the Bay Area where there's just offices everywhere
Mhm.
in San Francisco, I do see a lot of that where people are sending deauth messages,
Yep.
and people think the Wi-Fi just sucks, but it's not. It's you got somebody who's messing with you over
Yeah, so
here.
somebody who's watched Mr. Robot too much
Yeah.
and just thinks that
Hey, this is a security feature I should
yeah,
enable,
yeah, yeah,
which they
exactly.
should not. Don't do that, guys. Okay,
Yeah,
don't do.
yeah.
You can
Don't
do
be
it
a
in a
punk like
lab
that.
environment, but don't be a bad
Mhm.
Wi-Fi neighbor. Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
Uh,
John. With that said, where can people find you online, on Twitter, or on any other social media
so,
networks?
at jbizzle703 on Twitter, and then, Cyber Insight on YouTube. So, I'm always around. Come hit me up, ask me any questions. My DMs are normally open. Don't be ridiculous, but,
He is a security expert, by the way, so
Don't mess with.
he'll find you. All right,
yeah.
John. It was great to have you on the show to talk about your experience here with the Mist AI certification, and we hope you actually go and tackle the other ones, and we'll hear
Yeah,
about that as well. But we want to
appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Thanks for having me on. It was great.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you, John.
All
Yep.
right, thanks guys for listening. If you want to see the show notes or get links out to everything, just head over to cleartosend.net/253. That's where we'll publish all the links. And if you have any questions, hit us up on Twitter, comments on our show notes page, or hit us up directly. And we appreciate you listening and hanging on this long. And we hope that you enjoy your certification journeys. Even if it isn't Mist AI, we wish you the best on your certification this year, 2021. So you got plenty of time to tackle those. John's already tackled all of the associate level Juniper. So we're slacking. All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Have a good week. Cheers.